Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. There are only 4 players in the history of the Atlanta Falcons that have their jersey number retired. Only 4 players hang in the rafters, with no one ever wearing their number again. You have William Andrews donning the number 31 jersey, who made it to 4 straight Pro Bowls from 1980 to 83, and was one of the biggest offensive threats in the league at the start of the decade. You have Jeff Van Note at number 57, who played 18 seasons with Atlanta on their offensive line and made 6 Pro Bowls. You have Tommy Nobis at number 60, Mr. Falcon himself, who was the first overall pick in the 1966 NFL Draft and established himself as one of the best linebackers of his era. And then, you have this man right here, quarterback Steve Bartkowski. His number 10 jersey is up there, forever immortalized after playing 11 seasons in Atlanta. Until the arrival of Matt Ryan, it was abundantly clear that Bartkowski was the greatest quarterback in the history of the franchise. But what you might not know is that he was just moments away from being labeled a complete bust. He was moments away from being one of the biggest first overall busts ever. That was until one game in 1978 that completely saved his career. And this is the story behind that game. Before I talk about the game that saved his career, we need some context to understand why this game would have been a career saver in the first place, and how we got to the point where Bartkowski was fighting for his life. In 1975, the Atlanta Falcons had the first overall pick in the NFL Draft, and they desperately needed a quarterback. In 1974, their quarterbacks, whether it was Bob Lee, Pat Sullivan, or Kim McQuilkin, combined to throw for 4 touchdowns and 31 interceptions, while finishing worst in the league in every passing category, and finishing with a team passer rating of 27.8. Their quarterback play was so bad that season that they literally would have been better off spiking the ball into the ground on every single play. Bartkowski, the California quarterback, was seen by some as the savior to the franchise. How did that work out? Well, at first, it wasn't looking good at all. The 1975 season was not a terrible start by any means, as he threw 13 touchdowns in 11 games and finished near the league average in most of the major statistical passing categories. He even was named the Offensive Rookie of the Year by the Pro Football Writers of America. It was definitely something that you could build off of if you played your cards right. Unfortunately, the 1976 season was a disaster. Over his first 5 starts, he went 1-4 while throwing 2 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Then he injured his knee and would miss the remainder of the season. Bartkowski would finish his career with 11 knee operations, so this would be a recurring theme throughout his career. And the 1977 season was no better. In fact, it may have been worse. He started 7 games, missing some time due to knee surgery, and threw 5 touchdowns and 13 interceptions, finishing the year with a passer rating of 38.4. He wasn't a qualified quarterback from a passer rating standpoint because he didn't throw enough passes, but if he was, his passer rating of 38.4 would have finished as the worst total in football. It seemed like Bartkowski's career arc was taking a very similar path to that of Jim Plunkett. Both men were first overall picks on franchises that had never won a title before. Both men had solid rookie seasons and seemed to be on pace for big things. And then, both men struggled heavily over their next 2 seasons, to the point where their careers in the NFL were starting to be doubted. Sure enough, when 1978 rolled around, it seemed like Bartkowski's once promising career might be experiencing a massive bump in the road. Entering the 1978 season, it didn't seem like there was going to be any quarterback controversy whatsoever. Even despite Bartkowski not playing well over the past 2 seasons, even though the head coach was Lehman Bennett, who had no ties to Bartkowski when they drafted him, and even despite Bartkowski being injured way too often, he still entered the year as the clear-cut favorite. The only other quarterbacks on the roster were Kim McQuilkin, who in his 4 years with the Falcons had thrown 4 touchdowns and 28 interceptions, Scott Hunter, a career journeyman, and June Jones, an undrafted player out of Portland State who entered 1978 with 1 pass in the NFL. That pass went for negative yardage. And Jones walked out of training camp the year before. There seemed to be no legitimate competition for that starting spot. No way Bartkowski wasn't going to be the man under center when the regular season rolled around, right? Well, if it was his job to lose, he sure did a good job trying to lose it. In the first preseason game of the year, the Falcons took on the New York Jets, and Bartkowski struggled a lot. By the time he left the game, the Falcons were down 17-0. Bennett decided to take Bartkowski out and give Jones a chance, since that's what you do in the preseason. And Jones responded by completely rejuvenating the Falcons' offense. He actually threw deep down the field in the second half, and the Falcons came all the way back to win the game 20-17, even though the game was called with 99 seconds left due to lightning in the area. As Jones said prior to his arrival, the team was sagging, and no one expected them to win. It was one preseason game, but Bennett now had something to think about. From there, things got worse for Bartkowski. He continued to struggle throughout the preseason. In a loss to the Eagles, he threw 2 interceptions. The Falcons scored just 24 points over the final 3 games of the preseason, and Bartkowski was not even close to the reason that they even scored 24, as he struggled to get anything on the board as long as he was in the game. And at one point during the preseason, things got so bad that he was seen crying on the bench, which the media had a field day with. Fans were wondering which version of Bartkowski the Falcons would get, the one that looked promising like in 1975, or the one that looked atrocious like in 1976 and 1977. And if this preseason was any indication, they were getting the atrocious one. Considering how well Jones played, guiding the Falcons in both of their preseason victories, and how poorly Bartkowski played, Lehman Bennett decided to do what 1 month prior was almost unthinkable. He benched Steve Bartkowski. Some quarterbacks, when they get benched, take the news well. They don't let it affect them mentally, they don't let it impact their preparation or their psyche, and they remain rather unaffected by the news, as if nothing outside of their job status has changed. Safe to say, Bartkowski was not one of those guys. He took this benching hard. In fact, I'm not sure he knew how to take it. He lashed out at the coaching staff, saying, "I don't think there's any doubt that I'm the better quarterback." He lashed out at the media and the fans, saying, "I don't know how much justice there is. You get all the credit or all the blame." And he also expressed relief, saying that there was no pressure anymore and that it would have been tough to go out there and get booed again. And worst of all for Bartkowski, it was impacting how he acted off the field. The once outgoing quarterback made a complete 180 in his personality. As he said in the days after the demotion, "I have purposely avoided going anywhere. I find myself living in a shell. I try not to look into people's faces when I go somewhere, because then if they recognize me, I start acting differently. I can't be myself. I'm so fed up with everything." Bartkowski was in an absolutely horrible place mentally. If you were a Falcons fan and heard what he was saying, you might think that his days with the team and his days playing football were done. There was a legitimate possibility that his final impression was going to be crying on the bench and not suiting up for Atlanta after just 3 seasons. However, 2 things happened that completely changed Bartkowski's career path, and helped him when he was at his lowest point. Number 1, June Jones was atrocious at quarterback. In Week 2, the Falcons lost 10-0 to the Los Angeles Rams, with Jones going 5 for 15 with 38 yards passing, no touchdowns, 1 pick, 4 sacks, and a passer rating of 14.6. The Falcons actually finished that game with 3 net passing yards. That's it. And in Week 3, the Falcons lost 24-16 to the Cleveland Browns, with Jones going 4 for 13 with 62 yards passing, no touchdowns, 2 picks, 5 sacks, and a passer rating of 8. It was clear that Jones was not going to get the job done, so Bartkowski would be able to win his job back. And number 2, his attitude changed. He even said that he was not proud of himself for the way he acted after being demoted before the season opener, saying that he had a change in heart and a change in mind. He realized that he was putting himself first, and once he discovered God and Christianity, he realized that he should come first. That newfound spirituality completely changed his outlook and helped him through an incredibly dark time in his career. But after a Week 4 start against the Buccaneers where the Falcons lost 14-9 and Bartkowski threw for just 81 yards and 3 picks, he was still looking like he was on thin ice. 1 week later, though, everything finally changed for the better. October 1st, 1978, we're at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium for this NFC matchup between the Atlanta Falcons and the New York Giants. Oddly enough, this is not the first time I've done a video on a Falcons-Giants game from the 1970s, as I talked about what happened when these two teams met the previous year in 1977. If you want to learn more about that, and learn about an unbelievably dumb decision made during that game, then click the card in the upper right corner. But to say that this game was a huge one for Atlanta would be an understatement, because Atlanta absolutely had to win. They were 1-3 through 4 games, and even though 5 teams in the conference made the postseason now, they had little room for error. The Rams were 3 up through 4 weeks on the division lead, and the Cowboys, Giants, and Bears were 2 up on the wild card. If the Falcons lost this game and dropped to 1-4, any realistic chances they would have at the postseason would be completely crushed. And it sure seemed like Atlanta's season was coming to a premature end after the Giants jumped out to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter. But then, the Falcons came storming back, and the main reason they did it was because of the play of their starting quarterback, Steve Bartkowski. After all the struggles and all the trouble he went through to get to this point, he was finally looking like the guy that writers gave Rookie of the Year to in 1975, and was finally looking like the first overall pick that the Falcons expected. Atlanta stormed back, scoring 23 of the final 29 points of the game to win it 23-20. Bartkowski went 14 for 26 with 226 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and a passer rating of 96. He even had a rushing touchdown thrown in there to give Atlanta the lead in the second half. To put this performance into perspective, it was the first time since 1975 in his rookie year that Bartkowski completed more than 50% of his passes, threw a touchdown, and didn't throw an interception. Across all starts where he threw at least 20 passes, this game, where he finished with a passer rating of 96, was the second highest rating of his career. Coach Bennett was incredibly pleased, saying that this was the best game he'd ever played, and Bartkowski said that his change in mindset changed everything, saying, "I sacrificed going for the big play to stay away from the bad play." After a hard, painful road, Steve Bartkowski was back, and the rest is history. When the 1978 season ended, Bartkowski had guided the Falcons to their first playoff appearance in franchise history, and in that playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles, Bartkowski had arguably the greatest moment of his career. Trailing 13-0 entering the fourth quarter, Bartkowski threw 2 touchdowns, hitting Jim Mitchell on a 20-yard strike and Wallace Francis on a 37-yard strike. Atlanta won the game 14-13, and Bartkowski's heroics were a huge reason why the Falcons were able to win their first playoff game in franchise history after over a decade of suffering. And from there, the legend of Steve Bartkowski would grow. In 1980, he guided the Falcons to their first division title in franchise history, as they went 12-4 to win the NFC West. Bartkowski made the first Pro Bowl of his career after leading the league with 31 touchdown passes, and he followed that up in 1981 with another Pro Bowl season where he threw 30 touchdowns, finishing first in the NFC and second in all of football, only behind Dan Fouts at 33. He led the league amongst all qualified quarterbacks in completion percentage in 1984 by completing an astonishing 67.3% of his passes, which was the third best single season total in NFL history at the time. And by the time he ended his career in Atlanta, he had 11 seasons under his belt with over 23,000 yards passing and 154 touchdowns, with his number 10 jersey never being worn by any Falcon again after the 1990 season. But it's crazy how the entire narrative changes if it wasn't for that game against the Giants. If Bartkowski struggles in that one, who knows what happens? The Falcons probably miss the postseason. Perhaps Bennett goes back to Jones or signs another quarterback. And Bartkowski isn't remembered as a team legend, but rather as a team bust and just another quarterback in team history who couldn't get the job done. For many people, the Falcons-Giants regular season game from 1978 was just another game on the schedule, and another one of the tens of thousands of regular season games in NFL history. For Falcons fans who were around at the time, however, that game is known as the game that saved the career of Steve Bartkowski. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Monday and Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9 and subscribe to 60-second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters who help get the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.